welcome to the stage Sam Walker, Group Marketing and Creative Director, N Brown, and Sam Dolan of Jazz Hands.
Literally see the whites of their eyes, Sam, look.
I know, there they are.
No pressure. Hey, everybody. Hope you've all had a nice lunch. So, yeah, as Simon said, we're going to talk a bit about, and we might go a bit off-piste, because it's us, right, and we probably will, but we're going to talk a bit about kind of how Sam manages. Sam's got a lot of brands that he's managing under kind of the N Brown banner, so we're going to talk a bit about keeping that simple, and how consumers play a role in that, and kind of how he manages to juggle all these consumers and stay laser focused on the company objective. So, as we've said, your business is fairly complicated on the face of it. You've got a N Brown with a quite clear vision, and then you've got lots of stuff going on underneath it. So how do you even start to keep that simple without your head imploding?
Well, I think you've got to start by accepting that there will be complexity, so you can't simplify your way out of everything, because lots of the innovation that's out there, it's not simple stuff, and you're going to have to harvest it, or you're going to get left behind. But at the same time, you have to be able to be really clear on particularly the strategy and customer and the choices you've made in targeting them, so you don't lose track as you go through those innovations. I always go back to my inspiration is from my start of my career. So I was lucky enough to join Tesco at my start of my career in their heyday, so 20 years ago, believe it or not.
You don't look old enough.
Feel old enough. Been kind to me. But at the time, that was when they were kind of growing at a rate of knots, taking market share. And one of the big reasons for that was because they had an incredibly simple focus on the customer. So they distilled an enormous amount of complexity down into 5 simple promises of what they needed to do for customers. So all focused around having the right prices, the shopping experience, service in store, but in a way that was so simple, it was embedded throughout the business. And everyone says, oh, embed it through the business, make sure everybody knows it. I think at the time they had about 300,000 colleagues in the UK. Pretty much every single one of those could quote you those 5 promises. Wow. Every store you went in, they had KPIs up on the notice board. Everything was managed that way. So having had that vision of what it can be, I always come back to that to say, well, are we simple enough? Are we clear enough in those choices and what we need to do for that customer?
And that kind of highlights the right, like we talked when we were chatting about culture beating strategy every time. I know you're a 50-50 man, and I'm a culture beat, but again, got the right people in the right roles, championing the right messages. Yeah. Cool. So you briefly touched on consumers there. There's kind of quite a trend in our world at the minute towards, you know, back in the day we used to look at socio-demographics, and then we moved on to behaviours, and attitudes are very much the emperor's new clothes at the minute. But does that create quite a lot of crossover? How do you target consumers, and how do you keep the kind of buckets quite clear and simple?
Well, I think when you look at our business, we've got, you know, fast forwarding 20 years from that Tesco example, we're in pure play fashion, multiple brands, huge amounts of change technically, not just media, but also, you know, technically how the sites are run, how you work with Google and Meta and all the changes those guys do. So when you then layer on multiple brands on top of that, it's a huge number of customers that you need to get your head around and be able to manage, as well as manage that technical complexity. So what we do is we really then look to focus on how do we keep things simple strategically to then enable that execution with the complexity where it's needed. So the thing that runs through all our brands is making sure we're helping customers look and feel amazing. That's why our brands are there.
That's the N Brown.
That runs like a stick of rock through every single brand. So there's parts of fashion where it will absolutely be a bit more functional, and there'll be categories that we sell that are a bit more functional, but actually that emotional connection with the customer is so important, and being clear that's the kind of consistent part through all the brands. Mm-hmm. What we then do is we're really clear about we've got differentiated brands serving customers with a differentiated offer. So whilst that matters to customers through all the brands and in pretty much every group, it matters in a really different way, and we see that come to life when we speak to customers. So I'll give you an example. If we research with our Simply Be customer and you do accompanied shops through the site, you hear a really powerful story about the kind of emotional connection they're looking to have with the brand, and they're looking for different cues. So they're coming to the site, yes, looking for functional product, looking for fashion inspiration, but they're also looking at, do the models represent me? Does the way you're talking to me make it feel relevant for me, and make it feel like this is an aspirational place that I'm going to shop where I can belong. So that there's a huge emotional part to that customer journey. If you go and look at our Giacomo brand, which is men's fashion, there's absolutely an emotional part to it, but it's not in the same way in that shopping trip. It's very much more functional, it's speed, it's ease, it's finding the brands that matter really quickly.
No nonsense.
No nonsense.
Hence Freddie Flintoff.
Yeah. Although we've moved on from Freddie,
Well,
but
yeah,
everyone
no, I
remembers
know.
Freddie, so it was
Tell him
clearly
a
a very
Giacomo
powerful,
consumer,
very
sorry.
powerful connection. So we really focus on that differentiated view of the customer, and then we've organised our teams around it, and that's really, really critical. So rather than having every team trying to get their head around all those differentiated customer groups and their different needs, we've taken as much of the marketing teams as we can and we've aligned them by brand. So that would be your brand marketing, it would be organic social, but it would also be performance media, it would be CRM, it would be our creative team. So you've kind of got this hub of those teams aligned by brand, and they've all gone back to the customer. So every customer that we have a brand Bible for. We've got a really clear articulation of what matters to that customer. And it's really, really simple. And it's taken a long time, a huge amount of time invested in that simplicity. But there's literally probably 3 pages of a PowerPoint that describe everything you need to know about those customers, who they are, how we should focus on them. And it gives those teams a real common anchor that's incredibly powerful in helping them execute in the right way.
And I guess when you marry the emotional with the kind of who are they, that's the sweet spot, right? That's the kind of, okay, so we want to make them look and, I can't remember the line you said.
Feel amazing.
That feel amazing. But actually it's this distinct group. And so then you bring in the emotion down almost from the company vision, if you like.
Yeah, and then you bring it to life. You build a creative platform for each brand.
Yeah.
That does that in a really distinctive way. So we know for JD Williams, which is our brand for sort of 45 to 65-year-old women, it has to be done in a way that actually makes that customer feel seen, because that's a real challenge that they have.
Yeah.
Whereas for our Giacomo customer, it's very much about demonstrating size relevance, the right brands, fashion credibility, and those are the things that will prompt that emotional connection. So it's really differentiated, but it's by empowering those teams to have a very clear view of their customer, built around a really clear and simple customer profile, that you can actually then get them to do great work. And when we've onboarded agencies recently, it's one of the things that sticks with them. They get a real shortcut into understanding the customer. So in the second or third meeting, they're talking about our customer pen portrait. They're talking about what matters to that customer. And you've taken them on that journey so much more quickly because you've been able to anchor on a really simple way of talking to that customer.
It's an easier link into a media plan as well if you really understand kind of what's going to hit them from day one. So I mean, I'm a massive fan of emotional advertising. I think I read somewhere it drives something like 80% more loyalty in consumers. And we all talk a lot, don't we, about adding value beyond price. Well, that, you know, knowing your customer and translating that into some form of emotional advertising that, you know, nirvana for us as brand marketeers is when people go, I just love that brand. And you go, why? And they don't know. They just love you. That's like, oh, brilliant.
We're huge believers in that. So we work with, we use System 1 for the testing. So it's all about that emotional connection with the customer. So important.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to change tack a little bit. You're an adopted Northerner. You can probably tell from Sam's accent. He's an adopted Northerner. You're from Nottingham, right?
I'm from Nottingham.
So let's just talk a little bit about why we're so wonderful in the north.
I knew you were going to phrase it like that from when we chatted before. So I love this question. I've been in Manchester for 8 years and came up from having done 10 years in London, despite being from Nottingham. And being from the Midlands is really interesting. So if you're in London, you're a Northerner. If you're in Manchester, you're a Southerner. And you don't really belong anywhere wherever you go. So I very much came as an expat Londoner. And I remember the first day I came into work, my wife came into work, and she came home in the evening, she said, 3 people spoke to me in the street when I came into town. 3 people, they joined in my conversation. Like, what's wrong with it? And she was just really unnerved, having spent a life as a diehard Southerner. But it's brilliant, isn't it? So I think I've been on this journey from expat Londoner to hopefully now adopted Northerner and really embracing it. And I think M. Brown is a really proud northern business. So we've got more than 160 years of heritage and a huge connection to Manchester. Our offices up here, our distribution centres up here. We've been here for generations. So we've got a real connection to the north and to the city. And I think that provides us with an incredible advantage when it comes to how we think about the customer, how we speak, that whole cultural piece. And I was speaking to a couple of people from our agencies trying to get perspectives before coming doing this session. I was like, oh, what do you think of our team? How would you describe us? And one of them gave me the absolute perfect quote. I was like, right, thanks, Rob. I'm going to quote that pretty much word for word. and having started working with our creative agency recently, he said, I describe your team as really straight-talking Northerners who tell it like it is, absolutely no nonsense. We don't always like what they say, but I always know where we are, and it always accelerates us to a better place. That absolutely runs through the team, and I won't do any accents because I'll get myself in trouble.
Oh, go on, give us all a giggle.
I will. I'm sure we've got some in the audience. I don't dare do that and show my face in the office. But we've got lots of Mancunians, lots of Scousers. We've got like brilliant representation across the north, and you just feel this northern warmth that we were talking about backstage.
Yeah.
But it's also that real blunt honesty. So people are absolutely championing that customer. So we have a kind of shorthand names that we'd use for our pen portrait customers. So it might be Julie or Jack, and you'll hear people using that word saying, well, that's not right for Julie. Why would you do that? And they're really like passionate, challenging on behalf of that customer, but in that very accessible northern way. And I think you can over-egg the comparison, but it is a characteristic that definitely comes through the team. And we have lots of Southerners in the team as well, so we're very inclusive, but it really brings that flavour. And I think what we've found is it helps us talk really passionate about the customer. It helps the team feel really able to challenge on their behalf. And beyond that, it actually helps some of the business challenge us as well. So much as we've not talked much about the kind of more technical side, we as a pure play business, spend a huge amount of time focused on performance marketing, CRM, using data in the right way. Whilst we've got brand teams who are aligned on the customer, we have central core teams who look after capability, and that's absolutely critical. But what it enables the rest of the business to do is to challenge us when we're trying to push technical solutions through. They'll come to me and say, Sam, why do you want that? You don't really need that. Why do you need that? So it's not done in that rude, challenging way. It's done in a way that's disarming, but it's honest and it's open. And it's such a source of advantage, I think.
Because that makes your gig actually a lot harder because you're all online.
Yeah, all online.
So actually driving emotional advertising when there isn't a physical experience involved is potentially a lot more challenging as well, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all...
It can be. I mean, because you've got data, you can talk and connect with customers in a way you might not be able to if you haven't got that from a bricks and mortar store. But definitely it's a different challenge. And having, my career has taken me from Tesco to Co-op, both with 2,000-3,000 stores. You've got this real physical touch point where you can connect with the customer. It's really different in pure play, so you have to make every connection count. But if you keep coming back to that customer, knowing what makes them tick and knowing how they're going to respond emotionally, you've got a much better chance of connecting with them.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we talked a little bit before about planning as well, and obviously you've got your set consumer types. And is there an annual plan? Is there how especially in your world, I'm thinking digital moves so quickly. Can you plan annually? Or
we absolutely do plan annually because lots of core, budget planning happens annually.
Yeah.
You have to have an element of that. Our focus, our rhythm is very much seasonal, in line with fashion. So spring, summer, autumn, winter. But we make sure that it's quite flexible. We don't ever commit that far in advance. So when I joined from Co-op, which I thought was quite a quick turnaround, I was responsible for POS that went in store. You had to sign it off 3 or 4 weeks before it had to land. But you were always on this hamster wheel of turning stuff around. I remember in my first week at M Brown, I said to someone, what's the deadline for briefing and creating? I said 5 days. I said, well, 5 days till it's live. And we'll brief it 5 days before it's live, and we'll get it there. So super responsive, not always the best thing. So there is just because you can do it in 5 days or just because you can get hourly sales figures, you need to balance that with a longer view and keeping that customer front of mind. But that's the fun of it.
I'm having a flashback to when my son was learning to drive, and I was like, just because it's a 60-mile-an-hour limit doesn't mean we have to go 60 miles an hour. It's screeching on 2 wheels around the corner. Cool. I think we've maybe got time for a couple of questions, if anyone's got any questions for Sam. Or I can just carry on talking. I can't see anyone out there. Oh, they're putting the lights on. Anybody got? Yeah. Lady with what looks like beer but is a can of water.
What would you say your reasons were for bringing it on as creative agency partner, and what opportunities do you have?
For bringing on a creative agency partner. So we've always worked with an external agency partner, but we run effectively a 2-part model. So we've got a really big in-house team who are absolutely brilliant, real fashion expert, really passionate about the brands. And I think what we have done before, so we've worked with external agencies for some time, you get something different. So when you've got a team that's embedded in the business, they know the business inside out, they know the category inside out. They will be looking outside for inspiration, but you haven't got that distance. So what you get from that external agency, and what we've been really focused on, is making sure that we get that external perspective, someone who can actually look beyond the category, look more widely at what's going on in the industry, and effectively intentionally create a bit of that tension between the two. So you absolutely want them to be passionate about the work and to debate it, and you want, you know, the kind of guys who are doing fashion content 5 days a week, kicking the tires of the campaign work you're doing, but the two complement each other in a really powerful way.
Anyone else? Oh, no, you've obviously said everything they need to hear, Sam. All good. Okay, well, any closing comments from you, or are you...
Well, I think it comes back down to that kind of simple piece. If you look at all the brilliant stuff that's out there, there are hundreds of new tools you can use, huge amounts of new capability. I know lots of them will have been talked about yesterday and today, and I mean, they're critical. You can't not have them. You're just going to get left behind in the dust if you don't have it. But I think what's really important to pair it with, and where we've found it's made a huge difference, is being able to keep that really simple focus on the customer, so that you can keep the innovation in a place where it's going to add value, but actually you're using it to enable you to do a better thing for the customer, rather than it becoming an end in and of itself. And I think when we've done that, that's where we've done our most powerful work. We've been principled, customer focused, whether that's, you know, shining a light on the invisibility of our JD Williams audience, or whether it's really championing size inclusion. That comes out of that brilliantly simple customer focus. But you've got to then pair that with the technical innovation that helps you reach that customer in a really effective way, and can stand up to the competition that's out there at the moment.
So starts with simplicity, and then maybe use the complexity to activate
create the space for the complexity to then help you deliver faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Thank you. Brilliant. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.